Hello, everyone. Can you see me,
Yes, we can see you.
guys? Hello, 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 America. You guys, okay. My name is Sabrina Newby, and this is my first ever panel with Gain Power, and I am so excited. So please bear with me. If there's some hesitancy on my part, it's because we're learning to maneuver through this live stream, but we're going to nail it, you guys. Um, Today, I wanted to talk with you all about a very important conversation that's not only happening here in Georgia, but we are talking about it all over. And that is the importance of having of color in politics. And I'm here with a wonderful panel of elected officials, politicos, and political minds who are wanting to deep dive into this conversation with you. So, welcome, ladies. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each and every one of you. We're going to allow you to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And we'll start with State Representative Mandisha Thomas. Are you on mute, State Representative? Can you hear me? Okay, she can't hear us. So if you want to log back out and log back in, then you may be able to get a better connection and you'll be able to hear us. But we'll move on to Dr. Brittany Kirkland. Hi, Brittany.
Hi, how are you this evening?
It's wonderful to see you again. So we are doing
Yes,
great. Thanks for joining.
yes, thank you for having me. So a little bit about myself. My name is Dr. Brittany Kirkland. I am the Chief Program Officer at Project Ready, New Jersey. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to civic engagement, specifically getting folks out to vote for school board elections. We also are pioneers and experts in organizing and advocacy work. And a little bit about my background. I'm also a two-term elected official in my town. I currently serve on the Board of Education, as well as having a background in education and psychology, where I teach psychology classes at local community college. And so I've been involved in the education and nonprofit space for over a decade now.
But we're so lucky to have you. And again, it's so very nice to see you again. Sherrell Byrd.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. My name
I'm
is
so
Sherrell
glad
Byrd.
you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm Sherrell Byrd. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Sweeter Rising. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan advocacy organization based in Albany, Georgia. We proudly serve 14 counties and 43 cities that make up Southwest Georgia. Our mission is to mobilize people and resources to improve the quality of life, well-being, and political power of marginalized Southwest Georgians. And we specifically focus on building power and showing people how to tap into their civic power. So I'm really excited to share my knowledge and expertise and be a part of the amazing women that are on this call.
Oh gosh, I'm so excited about you guys. Angel Ratcliffe.
Let me unmute myself. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Angel Ratcliffe. I'm thrilled to be here today as a part of this groundbreaking Gain Power event. I am a business developer. The name of my company is the Ratcliffe Group, and I have over 12 years of experience in marketing and business development. I know you guys are probably thinking like, what does that have to do with politics? But I've had the privilege of nurturing entrepreneurial dreams and turning visions into thriving businesses. Through that, I lead community-focused business development, as well as craft innovative solutions to boost local businesses and improve the greater Savannah community. that journey has kind of taken me into overlapping business development with political campaign strategy. Both fields require strategic partnership building, operations management, and the ability to inspire and lead diverse teams towards a common goal. As a Black woman in politics and business, I understand the challenges and triumphs that come with breaking barriers and forging new paths. My dedication extends beyond the boardroom, and I'm active in my community, in various different political groups, and I'm committed to making a meaningful difference in this space. I'm so excited to gather with you all today to discuss the critical role of electing women of color in political leadership. And I feel that women of color bring a diverse perspective and invaluable experience to the table, which enriches our democracy and ensures that all voices are heard. So I'm really excited about this panel discussion, and thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. So thank you for accepting the call. And last but definitely not least, we're going to popcorn it over to you, State Representative Thomas.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. I am State Representative Mandisha A. Thomas of the 65th District of the Georgia House of Representatives. And I live in beautiful South Fulton County. I cover 6 cities and 3 counties right now. I've been in the legislature for 3 years. This is going on my 4th year, so this is my 2nd term. I will not be returning back to the legislature because we've done something awesome by creating a new Black voting district for Congress, and I will be running for that Congressional District 6. I am known as the political farmer. I know that agriculture is a $180 billion industry, and that Georgia's #1 industry is agriculture. So my main purpose for being in the General Assembly was to create and build young farmers. But I also sit on the Industry and Labor Committees and Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications, where I fought extremely hard to get on that committee because I know that Georgia could be #1 in alternative energy. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to see what comes out of this, women of color in politics.
Oh, I love it. Again, I'm so excited to have you guys join this conversation. It's a much needed conversation. And we're just going to get ready to take a dive. Okay, so first question. What unique perspectives and experiences do women of color bring to the political arena? So I just want to start this off, and then I'm going to let you guys join in. In 2020, we did something phenomenal right here in coastal Georgia. We helped flip the state to blue nationally. And the whole world was looking at us, but it was because of the engagement that women of color put in the work. We put the boots on. We trolleyed up and down the coast to make sure that voters were meeting the mark. They were going to vote. And it was sensational because of our efforts, along with so many others. But right now, because we're talking about women of color, this is what I'm focused on. Because of our efforts, we were able to elect 2 dynamos into office, Senator Warnock and Ossoff. So I would like to know from you all, what is your idea of the perspectives that we bring to the table? What is the unique richness that women of color bring to the table? And you guys can popcorn it over to anyone, and anyone can go first.
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
If y'all don't mind. So, I mean, I have a lot to obviously say about this from a perspective of I'm kind of in the role of supporting candidates who, women of color and women in general, is my area of interest in kind of taking these incumbent seats and flipping them. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because especially when it comes to women of color, we bring such a wealth of unique perspectives from our lived experiences that allow us to be in a place where we can offer firsthand knowledge of issues such as racial discrimination, economic inequality, healthcare disparities, these lived experiences allow us to advocate more effectively for policies that address the challenges of the constituents in the areas that we represent. And it just offers kind of like a more broad spectrum of opportunities for providing solutions and things of that nature, because of what we've lived through and because of that, of what we can bring to the table.
I think that's a great perspective. State representative.
Well, yeah, and I will piggyback on that, Angel, and I think you're absolutely right. Black women bring a voice of inclusion. And I know that sometimes in the past, Black women have gotten a bad rap on being very boisterous. And, but I think that voice is what's needed in this political climate. We need those boisterous Black women to expose things that have been swept under the rug for years. And me being in a General Assembly, I've seen that. So I've come to appreciate the boisterous Black woman in politics.
Like it. Sherrell?
Yeah, I was gonna jump in and say, honestly, from every woman in politics that I've seen has always been the moral compass of this country. We've always been the ones to shake people's collective conscience and make them understand what's at stake in this country. And I think that's because we carry communities on our backs. We are the ones that are the closest to the problems, and we're the ones that see every day in our families, in our communities, the injustices, the oppressions, and we feel it the most. As Black women, we're typically at the bottom of all the statistics, and we feel all the oppression the most. And so when we show up in these spaces, we tend to speak with power. And I know that we have been given that kind of angry Black women trope, but Black women have a lot to be angry about. And so I think that's righteous anger, it's justified anger, and we're at a place in our collective society where we need passionate women of color, Black women that are showing up in these spaces and are shaking the conscience of people, because it feels as though our moral compass is so off as a country. And so we need more women that are going to get us back right morally as a country. And it really takes Black women's voices to do that.
Mm-hmm. I love that. What about you, Dr. Kirkland?
I would add on to that and say that it seems like, especially in a lot of the rooms that I've sat in, that Black women also tend to be the voice of reason. And sometimes I look around the room and I'm like, did someone really just say that? Are we really moving forward with this idea? And it's like, I have to say something to kind of bring us back to say, like, that's unreasonable. You need to look at this from all perspectives to get to a viable solution that is effective for every single person involved, adult, child, whomever. And so I noticed that has consistently been the pattern of, in addition to all of the things my lovely panelists have said, Black women also tend to be the voice of reason. And when it comes to that point, that's when people start to really listen to, once you have all like your facts and you're showing them the discrepancies in what they're saying as well.
I love that. I agree. So this leads me to my next question. How can the election of women of color lead to more inclusive and representative policymaking?
I think I can start with that.
Yeah.
So what I've noticed is that there needs to be diversity of thought in the room, because when you're dealing with like a panel of people or a team where they all have the same lived experience, it doesn't make for good policy making, is what I've noticed. You need to push the envelope. You need to make sure that every little outlier is thought of. There needs to be that diversity of thought to make sure that every single like nook and cranny is taken care of, and so that there's no adult person, no matter what the policy is, that's falling through the cracks, and that everybody is taken care of. And so I feel like that only happens when we have Black women in the room, from my personal experiences. And so when we're thinking about policy making, you have to understand like policies, these are like governing rules over whatever it is organization that we're thinking about. And so really making sure that it's inclusive, that diversity of thought has to be there, that I think Black women bring to the table.
So this is a question that I'm very curious to ask each of one of you for your input. For those people who say that diversity should not be factored in, color should not be factored, race, whatever that makes us unique should not be factored in. What do you say about that in regards to us actually moving towards the inclusion of thought, diverse thought in policymaking?
I think it's a little asinine, and I experienced that same thing in the General Assembly with going back to agriculture. I mean, usually it's thought of a white male Republican industry, and so by me being a Black woman Democrat speaking up on the Agricultural Committee, I saw things changing. I saw Republicans including urban farming in their legislation and then looking to me as they're presenting the bill, and it helps urban farmers, Representative Thomas. But that's because of my voice pushing for inclusivity within farming and this Black woman speaking up in this white dominated world. And I mean, the voice of a Black woman is just, I can't express to you how much it means in politics. Because Black women are in politics, we see things that will never be addressed otherwise. Like we're pushing period poverty. We've had single mother day at the Capitol. These are things that wouldn't have come up if a Black woman was not in politics.
Mm.
I just have to say amen to that. Yes. And Representative Thomas, I am, in addition to me managing and strategizing for political campaigns and helping small business owners achieve, that 5-year mark that small businesses usually don't make it to, I too am a small farmer. I'm a beginner farmer, and I can attest to you from firsthand experience, the changes that have been made for Black farmers and beginner farmers and urban farmers that have allowed me to even take advantage of different opportunities through the USDA and NRCS that have allowed, my venture to progress. But, and once again, just amen to the fact that I think Ms. Byrd said it best. We tend to carry communities on our backs, and we speak for those whose voices are not heard. We speak for those marginalized groups that, up at the big gold dome, sometimes those voices are never heard. As a matter of fact, they're intentionally disregarded, if I may say so myself. And it is I concur. It is. I mean, I don't want to get to if we are not representing the true population of Georgia by being leaders up at the state and federal level, then these people's voices will never be heard. Our voices will never be heard. All of the communities, all of the disenfranchised, no one else is speaking up for these marginalized groups except for women of color in politics. So, I mean, we're identifying gaps, like you just said, gaps that are not addressed, gaps in, do our workplaces have spaces where working single moms can, get reprieve or get support, or I can go on and on, but yes, I just wanted to concur with Representative Thomas and say, like, even from my perspective as a Black beginner farmer, I truly do not see that we would be represented if it weren't for women in politics representing these marginalized voices.
Anyone else? So this brings me, how can we address the underrepresentation of women of color in political leadership roles? How do we fix this problem?
I think that the underrepresentation has a lot to do with finances. I'll start there. We have got to have a conversation about the pay of our representatives and our leaders. It is not a livable wage. It does not compensate for the time invested in being able to be a legislator. And for working class women, that is very exclusionary for them to have to take time off of work, be away from their families for what, $17,000 for 3 months. Or more. And we know, even though our legislators are in office for 3 months, but they're working throughout the year. They're being called away to different events and appearances, and they still have to go to sessions. And so it's pretty much a full-time job for the good representatives and the good legislators that are doing the real work. And so that creates a barrier for working class women, especially if they don't have like money in their coffers, or if they're single mothers and they're only on a single income. So we got to have a conversation about increasing the pay for women to be able to go into these positions. But I think also we got to think about how we start to create opportunities for women to just be women when they're in these offices. And so I'm so proud of some of our legislators at the state level here in Georgia who actually show up with their babies, and they actually breastfeed their babies right there in session to give that message that yes, women have to show up fully woman, fully mother, fully all the things that we are, and those allowances have to be made for women to be able to do that. So I think we need to start having some real intentional conversations about how do we start to clear the path and make things really accommodating for women in the same way that we've made things accommodating for men in many regards. We have to have those intentional conversations for women as well.
I agree. Anyone else?
Mm-hmm. Well, on the congressional level, I am committed. Most people have what they're going to do when they first get there as far as legislation wise. And I am too. I have several pages of a white paper, but more importantly to me, I am extremely committed to identifying a successor. We have a team in Washington. We would have a team in Georgia, and I'm committed to having someone on both teams. My fear, or what I'm trying to stop to be my fear, is that I die with all the political intellect. I don't need to die with the political intellect. I need to pass that on immediately. And the first thing to do that is to basically determine who that person would be. So I would be scouting out on day one, who is my successor? I don't know how long I will be there, but I want somebody to come undergird me, and then I would feel comfortable about just walking away when the time is right, and I don't have to stay and die in office because nobody else can do this but me.
Yeah. I agree.
To Representative Thomas's point, I feel like I sometimes have that same feeling too, of like you want to stay in it because you don't want the work that you've done and the progress you've made to essentially get turned around, but you want to also make sure that the people who are coming after you can help it. So it's like doing targeted outreach. Is also in a way making myself known so people can see me and be like, oh, there is someone in that seat that looks like me. I can do this too, because we have to acknowledge that imposter syndrome is real. So it's navigating that idea as well. But I think it's really just like kind of giving out that like reaching hand and kind of really answering anyone's questions when they ask, how did you get involved in this? What's your motivation? Just having those real raw conversations to kind of be able to kind of gear up the next group that wants to run and continue the progress that you've made.
I agree with you guys on so many levels. So we're going to kind of like shift the conversation and go into our challenges before I pose the next question. So here's what I'm going to say. I've worked with women of all backgrounds in regards to campaigning, but what I have learned is that women of color have the most challenges in raising capital or raising money, getting people to support their campaign, getting people to believe that they are qualified, even though they may have meet all of the qualifications of education and background. There's still this push to make people understand that I am qualified, I am a viable candidate. So, what challenges do women of color face, in your opinion, for running for office, and how can we basically ease these barriers?
I would like to chime in on that. In addition to what was said in the previous question, in addition to resources not being, dispersed to women of color wanting to run for political seats, in addition to candidate development, in addition to wage gaps, in addition to all of these things, there needs to be a serious conversation within the system itself, because from my perspective, there are gatekeepers that, even though diversity and inclusion is on the tips of their tongues, at the same time they're holding the door closed so that women of color do not have the same opportunities as our white counterparts. And there's some, this starts to get into a conversation of the intersectionalities of white women running for political seats versus Black women running for political seats. White males obviously have a leg up with them holding these positions of power for so long and almost preventing any opportunity for people of color to take these positions of leadership. There needs to be a serious conversation about, if this is a goal for representation as a whole, especially for the Democratic Party. If the Democratic Party wants to see full, true representation of their constituents, they need to be a lot more serious with supporting with resources, supporting with funding, just supporting as a whole women of color who are running for these seats, and not just through rhetoric and talking and like, yeah, we want women to run. And it just can't be women running. It has to be women of color running for these positions. And it can't be rhetoric, and it can't be marketing, and it can't be, just, oh, this sounds good on paper. How far are you going to make this an intention of yours? There has to be a level of intentionality. How far are you going to be intentional about making sure constituents are represented by women of color? How far are you willing to go to make sure that that happens? Are you going to put money behind this candidate? Are you going to put resources behind this candidate? How far are you going to be intentional about it? And it needs to be a lot more serious and a lot more it just needs to be a lot more than just talk and getting and rallying behind a candidate that has already kind of climbed the mountaintop. It's like, well, where were you when I was down at the bottom? And trying to get funding, trying to get this and this and that. Like, I'm already halfway up here, and now you want to get behind me and support me. Okay, I mean, I appreciate it, but I could have used your help way down at the bottom. So I think this is something that I'm very passionate and emotional about, because I see firsthand, as a person who helps candidates through the management of their campaigns and strategizing their campaigns, where is the support?
Right.
I see a lot of websites and a lot of, mission statements and visions and all this kind of stuff. but where is the support? And I mean tangible support with money, tangible support with staff, tangible support with, we need boots on the ground over here helping us knock on doors and can't, like, where is that? So
Yeah, especially when in today's time, in today's climate, we have a push for more women of color. We have a push for diversity in leadership. We are seen, but we also want to be heard. We don't want to be just the women who are flipping the state. We are not just the people who can be boots on the ground in grassroots organizing. We want to literally show how effective we can be in creating policy. And we are credible enough to be able to do that. I've seen so many people take office and there's a lackluster effect, because I'm like, and how did you get there? But there's a lot of push and promo behind them. And I'm like, and I can see a woman of color who is more of a viable candidate than ever. And there's like, well, not right now, but they can help with the campaign. No, we need to be out front because we're credible. We're credible. But what say you, State Representative Thomas?
Well, I was just having a conversation with a real good friend that we all may know on this call today. Um, I'm leaving my seat. I have relinquished my seat as of January 19th, 2024. And qualifying for my seat was started March 4th. No one reached out to any Black women to replace me. But we do, like you're just been saying, we have this huge push, and it's almost rhetoric, because when it was right before you, nobody touched it, and including I, and I didn't, because I was in a whole nother realm of trying to make this huge decision, and everything was spinning and going. But there was literally over 2 months for these organizations that push, we need Black women in office, to actually find a Black woman to replace me. And as a result, there are 4 young, fine Black African American males who are vying for my seat. And so I'll be happy with whomever is chosen, but I don't think we were true to thought. And then going back to your initial question about the challenge, and I have this same challenge, and I've learned this actually being out here running for a congressional seat. We have a challenge of networking. We go to networking events, but I don't think we foster the opportunities of the networking past that day of you meeting someone. And so I think we need to push it on through past that day so that we can really build up our database. Because when I sat down to start my strategy of who I can call on, the numbers weren't as high as they should be for a congressional race. It's not going to stop me from winning, by the way. But I'm just saying, it should have been much higher than what it was. I had people that I may have 25% fostered. And so I think we need to get to that 100% of fostering those relationships, and then looking at our money circle. And I learned this on the congressional race as well. And so when we go to raise money and you have a candidate that is constantly getting $25, $50, $75, $100, which is great because $1 is good. You can multiply, multiply, and multiply. However, if the next candidate is getting $1,000 donations, $2,500 donations, the max $3,300 donations, that's where the problem is. So we need to look at our money circle too and make sure that it makes sense. And so we want to be inclusive, and everybody we want to work with and we want to foster relationships with. But I think we have to be real intentional about who we're connecting with. And it's not that you're just trying to use people. It's just that you want to connect with the connectors of the connectors, and then you won't have these problems in raising money. Mandisha A.
Exactly.
Thomas.
What did you say, Dr. Kirkland?
I have multiple thoughts. So first, when you were reading the question about challenges and you were giving some examples, I was like, that was my whole run. So I totally understand. But I know I know there's been a couple of snippets around like support and money. And I can say for me personally, sometimes it's hard to ask for money. Right. And so talking about imposter syndrome, it kind of gets you a little bit because it's like, am I a good candidate? Can I ask for money? Are people going to believe in me? And so the fundraising piece, I think, is very important. Even if it's not you asking for money, but like building a team around you that's assisting with the fundraising, that's assisting with assisting with your campaign, and kind of like building your own machine. So everyone always talks about being a part of the machine. I don't have support from the machine, or I have support from the machine, right? And so it's almost to a point where you have to kind of like build your own. And then when it comes to just addressing the different challenges or the naysayers, I could say like you come back with them with facts, come back at them with your experience, come back at them with actual solutions, kind of don't hide any parts of yourself away from it. And then also kind of lean into what they're saying more and press it. And then it gets to a point of the conversation where it's like, oh, now I don't even know why I ever thought that. Or, oh, that was actually misinformation. And so in a sense, kind of like calling people out. And so I would say like those are some of the things, the types of conversations that I was having that got me to a point where people were like, oh, all of this other information that's out here is misinformation, is not aligned to you, and you really are here for the right reasons. And I think that is the point that you have to get across as to like what you value, why you're here, and why you believe you can do the job, and also come with solutions. Don't be vague. Don't say, oh, I could just make the world a better place. How are you doing that? Give me real solutions on how you plan in a realistic way to do that. And I feel like that is what will get people to start to kind of listen and overcome the misinformation of naysayers, is what I've seen.
I like it. What say you, Sherrell?
I will say, I think there's a gap also in our queen makers and our talent development of leaders. We need more women, not just running for office, but preparing women for office. So we need more women that can create fellowship programs and capacity building programs to address some of the things that Dr. Kirkland just spoke about. Because just because you want to run for office doesn't mean you're a fundraiser, doesn't mean that you have the capacity to run a campaign, doesn't mean you know the first thing about what it takes to pull off a campaign. I know Representative Thomas knows it takes a lot of work, right, to be able to run a campaign. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of relationship building. It takes a lot. And most people don't know that going into it. They just see a desire to serve their community. They feel like they have something to say. They have a voice. And then they get into the campaign session. I think that's where we lose a lot of people, when they realize how tough it is. And I've seen so many women drop out during the campaign phase because it is very overwhelming. And so I think we need more Black women leading these types of grooming programs. I've been through a few of them myself that are white-led and don't speak to the needs of women of color, aren't culturally sensitive or culturally relevant in many regards. And so we need more of those. We need more queen makers. We need more people that are opening doors, like that are like we talked about, connecting people with the funders and are doing the funding themselves, or sourcing the funding and building that type of those types of organizations that actually give to campaigns. Like we need Black women leading those as well. That's just spaces that we're not in, or there's just not enough of us in them. And I'm also seeing like kind of a loss, especially in our community, of Black women campaign managers and campaign directors. We need more of those women that are helping to lead these campaigns and helping to represent Black women in a way to their communities that's going to show them in the best and favorable light. So I think in addition to, this conversation about women of color in politics, we have to look at the whole ecosystem of the political machine and how can we make sure that women are at every level of that machine so that we are building pipelines of women that are continuously going into office. And I think not in a way of gatekeeping. I think we have to be very careful about that too, because I think there's a lot of times where women feel like they can't access a seat because I don't know that representative well, or I don't know that position well. And so we have to do it in a way that's inclusive, where women feel like they have access and opportunity as well, and not do this in the way that we've seen. I think there's a very white supremacist colonization way of approaching this that we have to break down and we have to get away of. And we have to make this look like, what does this look like for us to go into politics and to nurture and groom our people into politics as well. So I think we have to really start thinking holistically about how we approach politics and how we get women into every level of the political machine.
I would agree with you. So my next question is to just follow up on what you said, Sherrell. Do you think some of these organizations that are, basically teaching women how to run for office, should they put together some sort of platform, a class platform, specifically for women of color? Because our needs are different as candidates. Though for some high profile candidates, they can check off all of those boxes, but we have very few of those, very few of those. So for the everyday Black woman who's a grassroots organizer, who's doing the work, who's out here in the communities, should there be a program put in place specifically for her that takes her from basically being that grassroots organizer to that elected official?
I think there has to be. At this point in the game, there has to be. I will speak from experience. Like I say, I've been through these political programs, and I remember spending much time in those classes feeling like, this just doesn't resonate with me. This just doesn't speak to what I experienced as a Black woman, and this would not translate well in my community. And so I think, and I've actually talked to other Black women in the class that felt the same way. And we felt like a sense of community in that we weren't feeling represented by this particular program. And so I think we have to carve out and create our own niche in that area that is led by Black women for Black women, or led by that is Black led for women of color or people of color wanting to go into politics, because we do have different needs and different ways in which the system approaches us that we can speak to, and we need people with experience that can speak to how to navigate those types of things. So I think even I don't know if you've all had a chance to see the movie Shirley, but I think they illustrate it so well. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, go see the movie Shirley. It's an amazing movie, but it even spoke to all of the systems and all of the what do you call it? The cultural, what is the word I'm looking for? How she had to deal with the microaggressions, right, of that time. And how she had to navigate that, and how she had to be savvy, and she had to learn how to really build relationships, and she had to know when to speak up and when to step back. That's an art. That's a skill that doesn't come from just the traditional political capacity programs. That's a skill that we in our group, we have to have those conversations. Like, this is how you navigate being in a white male-led political system, and this is how you get things done, and this is how you work across the aisle and not leave your community behind or your political values behind in the process. And so, I think we have to start creating those things specifically for us so that we have our own safe space to have those conversations, but we're also giving ourselves real skills that are going to help propel us into these positions of power, so that we know how to move. We know how to, move through these legislators and Congress and be able to get things done in a way that doesn't compromise our values and who we are and how we show up as Black people.
I think the young people call it code switching.
Code switcher, and I don't believe in code switching because I feel like we have to give people who we are at full proof. Like we have to show up and be Black. If we protect them with code switching, then they will never appreciate who we are as Black people. So I say show up as you are, show up with your natural hair, show up with your kente cloth and your colors and all of those things so that they understand how to work with Black people and not not be uncomfortable when we show up as our true and authentic selves. So I'm not a code switcher. I don't believe in code switching, but I do believe that there is a way to navigate these spaces in an intelligent and intentional way so that we can get what we need for our communities. And that's, again, a skill that I feel like we're not teaching, and we have to have programs that help teach our leaders how to do that.
So I'll share the story with you. A couple of years ago, it was more than 2, but I was approached and asked if I was interested in running for office. And when I met the person, I had my hair big out like it is now. And they were like, well, first things first, you're going to have to do something with your hair. They were like, you're going to scare people. It's so big. It's so this. I was like, but this is not bad. And they were like, yeah, but if you're not going to straighten it, because I don't straighten my hair, they're like, just put a wig on that's straight. And that's going to make people find you less intense. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So you're absolutely right. Being able to show up as who we are and getting people to understand this, because I took offense to that. I took offense to that. There's nothing wrong with my hair. Even if I wear it in an afro, there's nothing wrong with my hair. It is my hair. And it's not something that I created myself, So in regards to that, I do think that being able to accept people where they are as well as meet them where they are, I think that's much needed within this world of politics in regards to women of color. But anyone else want to chime in on that subject?
And I'll just say really quickly to Sabrina, I was told the same thing when I went through a political program, that I needed to change my hair, I needed to change how I wear my clothes. And I was like, then who am I? Who will I be? Who am I projecting to the community that I'm giving them a false representative of who I am? And it was the same thing where you're going to intimidate people, or you're going to come across in this way that people, and this was told to me actually, unfortunately, by a Black woman, which was even more just kind of like jolting to hear that from another sister. But I understand people feel like that's what they have to do. But I think if we all keep accommodating those isms and we accommodate those fears, that they'll never get to a place where they respect us for our authentic selves. And so I'm a big believer in showing up with your locks, with your braids, Ayanna Pressley with her bald head. Like, just be who you are and force America to respect who we are as a people.
President Obama with his tan suit.
Yeah.
That to me, that was just I don't understand how that impacted the world so much, because he wore a tan suit. That was so strange to me, but I get it.
It was the swag they can handle.
Yeah.
And in addition to the political programs too, I can't help but go back to what Representative Thomas said earlier about the Black women that are in seats now, reaching behind them to grab the next person's hand to say, you will be taking this seat next, I think is also very important, and making sure that we don't lose grasp of the footing that we have already, been able to achieve. I know that, and Dr. Kirkland, it always just like sends a ping to my heart, like when you mentioned imposter syndrome. Our white male counterparts do not think at any point in time, am I qualified for this job? They're just like, well, my daddy did this, so I'm doing it next. And
even the one that's not qualified.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So if Bubba can get up there and Bubba does not have a background in politics and didn't take all these political classes, if Bubba can do it, we can do it too. Yeah. And we don't need to continuously try to, I've got this credential, I've got this degree, I've took these classes, I've got these certifications, and we just need to go in there and just do it. They learn on the job. They, their uncles and dads and, kind of usher them in and, we need to usher our next class of people in as well. And like you said, be given the grace to make mistakes, be given the grace to be authentically ourselves, be given the grace to learn on the job and not get ridiculed for like, oh, well, this is a freshman congressman learning on the, just like your son Bubba did. So
it's interesting that you said that, because it's like they have someone that they saw do it. And so that's how they were like, oh, I could do this. And so now being in this seat, that's what I tell everybody, like, I'm here. I can help you if you have a question, like if you need an introduction, like anything, I'm here. Because once someone sees someone who looks like them doing it, then it kind of gets you over that fear of like, oh, well, I can do this because there are people there who look like me. So it's kind of getting rid of it essentially, but it's like, it still takes like that first leap of faith to be like, okay, I'm doing this no matter what. So yeah.
No matter what. You guys, I could go on and on. We definitely need a part 2 to this discussion because I didn't get halfway through the questions that I had for us. You guys were so phenomenal. We just had this great conversation. So we got to come back for part 2. But I just want to give you all a couple of minutes to make your closing remarks on your final thoughts on the significance of diversity and representation, political leadership, and what is the call of action? What are we leaving our on this platform? What do we want the public to do in order to elect more women of color? Even not just elect more women of color, but bring more women, giving more women of color the opportunity to work for top elected officials that they have helped support. So what is that call to action, and what are your closing remarks?
Well, I'll start.
I think we've just, well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll start by saying I think we could have a whole podcast on this issue, actually. So put that in your pipe, on your to-do list. But I think it's really time that I think one of the good things about the American democracy is everyone has an opportunity to be a part of our political system. You don't have to be qualified. Like Ms. Ratcliffe said, you don't have to have credentials. You don't even have to be the best. You can be mediocre and still rise to the highest position of this land and be the president of this country. So I think that alone should give women courage to stand on that you have everything it takes to be in these positions, despite what people will try to tell you that, oh, you're not ready. Oh, you just need to wait a little bit longer. Absolutely not. Give it a try. Get out there and run for office, because I think Black women are the future. We speak to the future when we run for offices, whereas it seems like in this white male-centered country that we're in, they're always talking about history and the wars and the past and all these other things that don't progress us forward. And so progress typically comes from women of color. Progressive movements are typically birthed from women of color. And so if we're going to have a future, a bright future in America, we have to have Black women at the forefront. The future is Black female. I truly believe that. And so I encourage any woman, get plugged into this political system. And it doesn't have to mean you running for office, like Sabrina said. It could mean you working in politics. It could mean you running campaigns. It can mean you just getting out here and pounding the pavement and knocking on doors. But we need more women plugged into all levels of the political process. So get out there and let's get it done, Black women of color.
Done. Yes. Anyone else?
Just really quickly, I think we've just turned this into the preparation of the Black woman in politics. So I think we've left women of color in politics and turned it into the preparation. And I would say that the challenge would be um, to go out, find women, Black women, but encourage them on the level that there's good, there's bad, and there's ugly in this business. And from past experiences, I don't think we tell the full truth. And then we have gotten some women in office and they said, this is not for me. After we've pumped money, after we pumped time and labor into getting you in office, and then they don't last. And I've seen that a couple of times just in my little 3 years in the General Assembly. So I just wanted to be in full truth and we need to let women know that, especially Democratic women, that you may not be able to get a bill passed. You may not be able to get an appropriation on any level, whether it's county or state. However, we need to express to them the power and the authority that we have in our communities, how we can change people's lives in our communities, how we can partner with the 3 Ps, that there is still work that can be done, even if you can't get it done through legislation.
Dr. Brittany?
I think a lot of great things have been said, and it makes me think about how I first got involved. And I will say, when it comes to like school board elections, a lot of people said to me like, oh, no one really pays attention to the school board. That's an easy entry into politics. And in my mind, I was like, I'm not a politician. I'm just an educator wanting to do my civic duty. Boy, was I wrong. But what I will say is that I have learned a lot, and definitely do your research. Understand if you're looking to understand who to vote for, understand who has your best interests, who aligns with your values. And then to the points that were made, even if you don't want to run for office, let's say, you can still be a part of somebody's support system. You can still help with advocacy. You can still help with organizing. There is a lot to be done. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in a political seat if that's not your choice. But if that is your choice, I would say just believe in yourself. Just keep pushing through. There are going to be people who are coming at you. There are going to be people who are going to love and support you. And so just to keep pushing through, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, you'll always feel connected to your mission, and that essentially will help you push through it all. And then just to remember to also be realistic, that to the point that Representative Thomas said, there's going to be times where you can't affect as much change as you want, but just take like the small wins, because they do lead to the bigger wins, and it's all building on top of each other for a purpose. So don't get discouraged either.
Thank you. Angel?
So, Dr. Kirkland, you touched on what I was immediately going to go to, which is encouraging women in our communities, in our circles, to start out by just, run for your president of your local HOA, run for, county commission or city council or planning and zoning or, board of elections. Start. Sometimes when we say politics to people, they immediately go to like, oh, senator, governor. And, it starts with just, school board, HOA, planning and zoning. These things you can, number one, get your foot in the door, but number two, affect change like right in your immediate community. And then you can become seasoned. I think secondly, just kind of what to Mrs. Byrd said, which is, holding these seats of leadership, thank goodness, our democracy does not, it's not based on like what your qualifications are. Like, oh, so, if someone feels like, oh, well, I don't have, a master's degree, or, it's like, girl, you can go and take that seat anyway. If you have a desire to uplift your community, you feel that you have a leadership mindset, you want to organize and mobilize the people in your community so that they can try to collectively bargain for better within the powers that be within your community, then that's all it takes. So my call to action would be just encouraging our sisters to, just start with just HOAs and planning and zoning and things like that. And then secondly, just letting them know that it does not take a rocket scientist to run for these offices. Because let me tell you, you saw who our last president was.
Michelle Obama said it best. She said she had been in the room with some of the top leaders of the world, and she said, they ain't so smart. I can understand that. And first of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out today to engage this conversation. It is a conversation that I've had, I think, with each and every one of you. And I'm certain I'm going to continue to have that conversation. We are on the cusp of something great and something very profound for not only women of color, but for the nation. I believe that the nation is ready for Black women to take their rightful place in leadership, but we're just lacking the opportunity. We're lacking people who are willing to believe in us, believe that we're viable. And though we have some, we need more because we need the resources to help us get there. So I have two calls of action. I have a call of action to women of color. I would like for them to fall so we can catch them. You have a group of women here that are ready to help you get to your next level, at whatever that level may be. We believe in you, we support you, and we are here for you. And we are here for whatever you have to offer us as an elected official, a grassroots organizer, a campaign worker, the next congresswoman, the next state representative, city council, board of commissioners, school board, whatever that may mean to you, we are here to catch you. And for the world, I have one thing to say. We are educated, we are capable, we are ready. You've seen what we can do in 2020. You've seen what we can do every election. We show up, we show out, we take care of our houses. So now it's time for us to send us to a bigger house, send us to the state house, send us to the Capitol, because we are viable. And with having said that, I thank you guys for tuning in to Women of Color podcast. And I hope that we'll see you guys again on part 2, maybe. You guys ready for part 2? Thank you.